The Front Row Show does not reflect the views of Utah State Athletics, or its affiliates.
Excuse me, what the hell's going on out here?
I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style.
Stick this in your trophy case.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is game week, and this is the Front Row Show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Front Row Show, and welcome to the 2013 Utah State football season. As always, we are your hosts. I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Jeff Browning. As always, follow us on Twitter at USU Front Row. Check out the Facebook page, USU Front Row on there. YouTube channel, there's a lot of good content going up there. YouTube.com/USU Front Row. The website is always available for your reading. And we have a special guest today to break down the Utah game. Joining us from the Deseret News, it's Kraig Williams.
Yes.
Yeah, Kraig.
Hi. Welcome
Thanks
to the
for having
show,
me.
Kraig.
I apologize that everybody just turned it off when they heard my voice.
That's okay.
That's okay.
We'll bring them
You
back.
get,
You
you
know
get
what?
credit
Yeah.
as long as they download
Now
it,
we just
right?
got to win them back.
Okay.
Yeah, they downloaded it already. We're good to
we've
go.
done our work.
We'll continue on symbolically.
It is finally time to talk football, guys. So, looking at the game this week, Thursday night against Utah, down at Rice Eccles, what are your first thoughts when you look at this game?
Big picture, this is going to be tough. You know, anyone thinking that because we beat them last year and we've got a lot of talent coming back, thinking this is going to be an easy win or a slam dunk victory, I just say no way. This is a good Utah team in a very tough environment, and you know we've got a lot to prove that we're continuing strong in the Matt Wells era, coming under new leadership. Utah, on the other side, is out to prove that last season was a fluke, and they've got the crowd on their side. They still got a lot of talent, and I think this is going to be a very tough game, an entertaining game.
Well, the fact is, for me, and I think Matt hit it on the head, people look at a 27-20 score and imagine and remember that game much differently than I do. But if you rewatch it, the end of that game was tough. It was an overtime game for a reason. But I do give our team the edge, and the big edge I give them is experience. I don't think in any way it's going to be a blowout victory, but I am predicting a Utah State victory simply because we do have a lot of people returning.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very close game, and I would echo those things. When you think about it in retrospect, it seems like Utah State won by 14, 21 points. My feeling on thinking about that game is way different than what the results were. I feel like it was a big-time victory, and when you look back at it, that was an overtime game that Utah had a chance to win at the end of regulation. They had a decent field goal shot to end it.
Yeah.
Matt, my feelings on this game are in line with you in that this is a statement game for Utah State. If you can go down to Rice Eccles and beat Utah, it's kind of the big moment where you've showed that you've arrived as a program with a big road victory in a big-time environment. That's kind of the next step in the progression of Utah State football, is to get that big win on the road. This could be the night that finally happens.
I think one of the biggest points that you can really make about this game is that, you know, even though Utah's had a tough year last year in the Pac-12 and really a tough go all around in that conference, if you take them as they are right now, they've had a few really good recruiting classes. They're still a very tough team. I mean, they hung right there with us last year. If you take them and put them in the Mountain West Conference as they are right now, I think they're among the top 4 teams.
Oh, they'd be very
in
good.
the Mountain West. And this is a road game against a team that's that good. You know, we're worried about going on the road to San Jose State. If we had to go to Fresno State, we'd be worried about that game. This game should be no different. It's in that level. You look at the recruiting classes Utah's had, and they're loaded with, you know, a lot of 3-star, some 4-star guys. And while there's a lot of flaws to those rating systems, there's still something to it. And you know, you can look at a handful of guys on USU's roster and think, hey, I remember him. He was a 3-star guy, because that stands out to us. So they've got athletes, they've got talent. It might not be as refined as Utah State's, but they're at home and they're still very good. And this is going to be a very tough game.
If you look at that, they've been a great program for a decade. It's more likely that one bad year is an aberration more than it is a downtrend for them, that they're just had a bad year, had a hurt quarterback, had all kinds of issues, and they're going to reload, and they're going to be really good this year.
For our preview of the Utah game, we're going to go position group by position group. We're going to break it down. Matt's going to be our guide through this. So, Matt, start us off.
Yes. All right. Well, let's start where it all starts, on offense, and that's the offensive line. We're going to do the offensive side of the ball first. And Utah said that they feel their offensive line has improved from last year, and I think they returned 3 starters. They've got some good size, some really good size up there. But Utah State, on the other end, returns 5 starters. So at this spot, I feel it's not difficult to agree that we can give the edge to the Aggies on offensive line.
I think that's exactly where I'd be sitting, and it's the prime example of that experience I talked about a little bit earlier coming back in. You're bringing 5 guys who know how to work together. That synchronization is more important on the offensive line than just about any other unit. So I'd give us the edge there. But they do have some athletes and some size on that line.
Yes. Well, one other point. It's 5 guys from an offense that produced high offensive numbers last year rather than
5 good offensive
3
line.
returners from an offensive line that was a part of a really struggling offense. Moving to the edge of that, the tight ends. Now, this gets a little interesting because we've been in love with DJ Tialavea through camp. He's been great. And we see some potential down the depth chart there. But Utah has a couple guys that are very good. And Jake Murphy and I always forget the other guy's name, Wesley Tonga.
I think Murphy will be the star for Utah in this game. He has shown that he's a great pass catcher. He's a great route runner, good blocker. He's going to be a weapon that Utah utilizes highly because they're going to need to produce against our defense. They're going to be able to move the chains. And the way you do that is when you have a great pass-catching tight end, which Murphy is. However, I almost go with the draw on this because I think Tialavea is just that good. Just doesn't have the proof that Jake Murphy has had.
See, I don't think it's close. I think Utah's way ahead. Jake Murphy is really, really good. Wells has said that that's the one thing he's looking at. As a former tight end coach, he would kill to have Jake Murphy. I think Tialavea is going to have a great season, and he's a road grader as an offensive lineman.
I think depth-wise, Utah has a lot in the tight end position.
I think Jake Murphy can do so much. I think he's a clear advantage.
I think when you go with Murphy's experience, having done it, he's proved it already, and he's proved to be great. And he's proven to be very, very good. We know DJ can be good, but having the proven asset, I have to give the edge to the Utes on tight ends. And I think when it comes to wide receivers, this is where it's been the concern through camp. We've seen progress from the Aggies, but again, with the Utes, they've got a couple guys in Kenneth Scott and Drez Anderson who are very, very good. And they're going to give our secondary all that they can handle. I think Matt Wells said this is arguably the best receiving core we're going to go against all season, which is some pretty lofty praise when you look at some of the other teams we have down the schedule. This is another one I think is a no-brainer. Wide receiver edge goes to the Utes.
That's a little bit of hyperbole when you have Marcus Lee and me or you could be the best 2 wide receiver combo.
Yeah.
But they're really good. I would also go with the Utes on that one.
Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because at running back, both teams are returning guys that had, replacing guys that had very solid production. Kraig Williams is gone. John White is gone. In comes Joe Hill, who we've seen some good flashes from, and Kelvin York, who was a pretty decently highly touted recruit for the Utes, who is going to be the guy this year. With having not seen a ton of both of them, I feel this one's a draw. And a lot of people might think that's a little outlandish because we've seen Joe Hill do some great things, but at the same time, Kelvin York is capable of a whole lot, and there is the little bit of the injury concern with Joe Hill. And as good as Joey DiMartino's looked in camp, Utah might have some other guys up their sleeve too.
Well, that was the point I was going to bring up is you usually settle these draws by looking at depth and seeing after your starter position who's going to be able to come in. But even if you go to that point, both squads are pretty unproven at this point. We really don't know who's going to be able to come in on either side. This is a really hard one to predict. I would feel guilty throwing it either way, so I think the draw is the right choice there.
I think the X factor in the running game is your offensive lines. I mean, those guys that are creating the holes for the running backs to hit. And, I mean, like we talked about with the offensive line of Utah State, good offensive linemen coming back. Utah has a pretty decently experienced offensive line as well. You're probably right. This is a close one, and draw probably is the right call on this.
Then you get to quarterbacks. This one... we've got the experience versus another highly touted up-and-comer that Utah has in Travis Wilson, but Chucky Keaton. I mean, he's the guy. I think Gordon Monson over at the Deseret News said he was
the Tribune.
Tribune said he was the number 1 most important player in the state of Utah this season.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I don't think that you're going to have any. Chucky's going to be the best quarterback in almost every game he plays in this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it last week on the tweet sheet that if Chucky Keaton gets injured or goes down, then the whole season for Utah State is totally flip-flop, and it changes. He is the most important player on the Utah State team, and he really makes this team what it is.
That isn't to take away from what Wilson's capable of, and I think towards the end of this next season, you're going to watch him really kind of come into something.
Wilson hasn't had a full season yet.
Well, and the fact is they're playing in a different offensive style this year than they played in last year. I think once he comes into his own, he's going to be a killer quarterback. But I won't say at all that I'm guilty for saying that we're lucky to catch him early on in this, because I think he's going to be much more of a weapon 6 or 7 games down the line than he will be against us.
And one last X factor, too, with the Utes' entire offense is Dennis Erickson. I mean, that's a guy who has put together some quality offenses in his career. While he may have had some stumbles as a head coach in recent years, he's still done well, and he's in the picture for them now. And I think we'll get more out of these guys than just Brian Johnson did last year as an offensive coordinator that was kind of a little fish thrown into a very big pond without time to develop.
It'll be interesting how Utah adjusts to that high tempo that they're trying to start this year. If they can roll right out game one and be efficient with it, or if it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of work out the kinks.
All said and done, that's out of the 5 different positions we named, that's 2 for the Aggies, 2 for the Utes, and a draw. Now we move to the defensive side of the ball, and starting on the lines, which is where it all starts, this one is a really intriguing setup to me, because on Utah State's side, you've got Connor Williams, who is fantastic, AJ Patiali'i, who had a great finish to last season, BJ Larson, who looks to be the starter and has impressed me all through camp, with Jordan Nielsen right there with him, who was an all-WAC selection last year. Going over to the Utah side, you have Nate Orchard. Very good. Yeah, and a lot of people look at this line and say, well, they lost Starlo Tulele and the Kruger brothers, but they've still been getting a lot of hype, and really for good reason when you look at it, because Nate Orchard's a good player. Teni Pelopoi is a guy that Utah State highly coveted as a recruit a year ago. He's a senior now and primed for a big year. And then Trevor Riley, who's kind of their utility weapon, both as a defensive end and as an outside linebacker. It's a good unit that they've got here. And you look at their 2 deep all around, 5 seniors, 2 juniors, and 1 freshman. That's an experienced, tough, big unit that I think gives Utah really something to work with there.
Well, I mean, it's another unit that I think is probably one of the best proven that they have on the field at this point. And it comes down to while our line may be good up at Utah State, we really don't have a whole lot of numbers to really show. I mean, with Al Lapuaho leaving,
Javier Lasiki as well.
Losing Javier Lasiki were 2 top contributors last year. And, I mean, you do have to also take into consideration we're running a different defense than they are. So we're comparing our 3 guys' output to their 4 guys. It's going to be a bit of a toss-up, but I definitely would say that with the output they have, their size, and the defense that Utah's known for, I would probably give the defensive line over to Utah on that one.
I do as well.
Yeah, I would agree. You got to give Whittingham the benefit of the doubt. He churns out defensive tackles like nobody's business.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just routine for him at this point. Moving back to the linebackers, though, this is, in my opinion, the slam dunk standout unit for Utah State's entire team. Dowdy, Vigil, Fackrell is a trio, I think, as good as any linebacking trio in the nation. And put whoever you want at that 4th
Terrell
spot.
Thompson,
they're going to do
Vigil.
well. Yeah, Terrell Thompson, Nick Vigil, Tavares McMillan, LaBradford Harold, all guys that bring great depth. And while the Utes do have a couple quality players here, if Brian Blecken's healthy, he's a good football player. VJ Fehoko. Let's never forget that recruiting fiasco of how excited we were thinking we might land him.
My question is, just real quickly, do you think if the Aggies had landed Fehoko that he would be starting right now?
He would be.
I think he would. I think this coaching staff would have turned him into a player. I mean, he's starting for the Utes, and he's a good football player. I mean, he maybe hasn't been the lights-out superstar that everyone thought or hoped he could be, but at the same time, he's only a junior this season.
And he's
the
a
best
physical
could very
specimen.
well be yet to come from him. But all in all, I got to give this edge to the Aggies, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah, same thing I said with Chucky Keaton. They're not going to face a better linebacking crew than they have on their own team all year, I don't think.
I think one of the big edges for me is the fact that we do have a lot of depth at that linebacker core. And while the Utes may be trying to run a high-speed offense at us, we're going to be ready for it because we're playing against it all the time in practice. Yeah. But not only that, but we've got Keelan Hollis, who's still sitting back there. Okonkwo. I mean, talking about all the depth we have, we're going to be able to keep guys fresh and really keep things going through as far as fighting that battle out not only on the line, but dropping into coverage, stuffing the run game. So I think that's one of the X factors to the game could be tempo, but our linebacker core's depth and how many guys we have who can come and contribute really stands out to me.
Well, you want to talk about that depth. I just talked to Zach Vigil at practice, and he said his little brother's better than him. How often does an older brother say that about his little brother? But he's like, as soon as he picks it up, he's way faster, stronger, bigger, everything.
Moving to cornerbacks, I think this has been a storyline that has really gotten out there about the Utes camp, is that their cornerback position is probably their weakest spot. And whereas for Utah State, we've seen Rashard Stewart step up and be fantastic.
He's had a great camp.
Tay Glover-Wright is a phenomenal athlete. Jeremy Morris has come in as junior college transfer and really acclimated himself nicely. And then Quentin Bird, returning from injury, has been another guy that when Matt Glade was on the show, talked about as one of his studs of camp. So this is another one that I think the Aggies are very good at this spot. I feel very good about this position. And on the flip side, the Utes, it's kind of their Achilles heel of camp, it seems like. This is another one I got to give to the Aggies.
Well, it's difficult to really even say. I mean, they release a new depth chart every once in a while down there, and it seems that between cornerbacks and safeties, there's always someone new on that list. And it's interesting that we were concerned about this a lot for the Aggies to start the season off, but the 4 that were on there to start the season, to start things off in spring, are the 4 who are still there now, and that hasn't changed for us. I think that solidarity really speaks for us, so I'd give us the edge in this one as well.
Moving back to safeties. Now, this is one that Utah had things kind of go wrong for them. They had a highly touted junior college recruit in Tevin Carter who ended up not qualifying academically. He was expected to start. I believe Kyle Whittingham said something along the lines of, we had all our eggs in his basket, leaving them scrambling for another safety to start opposite Eric Rowe, who is one of the better safeties in the nation.
Yeah, he's a great player.
But with that, they suddenly have a lot of uncertainty, whereas Utah State has a returning starter in Brian Sweet, a guy in Maurice Alexander, who is a former starter at linebacker that looks to be fantastic at free safety. We knew the USU defense was going to be great, and I don't feel it's out of line to give 3 out of the 4 edges to them, but I got to give safeties to the Aggies too.
I agree with that. I think Rowe is a tremendous player for Utah. He is definitely a safety who will make a lot of plays. But when you combine Brian Sweet and Mo Alexander and their ability to not only defend the pass but to deliver that hit to break up,
the run stuffing is where
the run
they're
stuffing
spectacular.
And just everything that they bring together as a unit. I agree. I think the edge does go to Utah State there.
I think Mo Alexander is going to be the surprise of the defense. When I talk to guys at Media Day and then throughout camp, I always ask, who's one guy you think is going to really step up? And Mo Alexander's name came up, offensive or defensive player, no matter who I was talking to. He came up, one of the first people they talked about, and everybody said he hit like a train except for the guy who said he hit like a truck. So he hits hard enough that the team is pretty high on him. I think he's going to do a great job this season.
And for me, I think starting opposite that star safety, right now they have someone listed, 5'9", 182 pounds? Which, yeah. I mean, it's not, I'll be the first one to say that size doesn't necessarily always matter. But when you're going against our offensive line and what we've seen that our running backs have been capable of doing in the past years and watching some of Joe Hill's tape in the past, what he can do after first contact, if you have safeties trying to cram that line to stop run and stuff run, and he's going against someone 180 pounds and 5'9", we're going to be able to watch some yards after contact start stacking up there. Yeah, it's, once again, a huge question as to who really is going to be able to make a difference there, but I have no problem giving us the edge in the safety race.
I think overall, you look at Utah's guys, and they have a lot of guys with talent, but there's also a lot of guys who are unproven, whereas Utah State brings back a ton of lettermen and a ton of guys from their two deep that were contributors last year and who have shown in camp that they're going to be good players, whereas we've heard reports out of Utah that that's not so much the case, that they have guys that, no one's really stepping up and we don't know what we're going to do. And I think mostly in the defensive backfield for them. They're doing just fine at defensive line, and they've got a good linebacking core. But it appears that secondary outside of Eric Rowe has really kind of become a mess for them.
In breaking down the game, we wanted to give you, the listeners, something that maybe we're a little concerned about. So we're going to call this next segment What We're Scared Of when you look at this game. Matt, you want to lead us off?
My first thing is, as good as our defensive secondary is, the Utes wide receivers are very good, and I think Travis Wilson is capable of making plays. offensively for the Aggies, it's going to be a grind. We're going to have to grind out yards. We're going to have to grind out points. And if the Utes are able to get a quick strike or two for big yards or a big play touchdown, that could cause problems for Utah State. That could put us, under pressure and really fighting for those extra yards. And the last thing we want to be playing on the road with a new head coach is playing from behind. We don't want doubts. So the big play abilities of their wide receivers and Jake Murphy is what scares me most about this game.
What scares me most is going to be blocking outside of the offensive line. We know our offensive line is going to be able to stand up. Our tight ends are going to be steady, but blocking from our running backs as well as blocking from the receivers. If Chucky's out scrambling, we can't have him taking hard hits. We need people blocking out. We need to see protection coming from our running backs in the backfield. We need our receivers blocking downfield. That's where I think Utah's going to be able to disrupt our offense, if it's going to happen, is by dialing up blitzes from the outside, by being able to pick stuff up out there. As long as our receivers and running backs can block as well as perform their other duties, I think we're going to be in good shape. But that's where I'm scared at.
I would say on offense, you got to have somebody who's going to stretch the defense. Or you're going to have Travis Van Leeuwen, or you're going to have Travis Reynolds, somebody step up and take a couple deep shots that are legitimate reception opportunities, not just running straight down the field. You got to have one of those guys step up so they don't just drop 10 in the box and just shut down Joe Hill. On defense, like you were talking about, I think the safeties are great run stoppers, but I would be worried about getting beat deep. Drez Anderson is fast. They have good, fast receivers, and they might be able to take a couple shots deep and stretch Utah State if they're too run committed.
My prediction is, Kraig, that they will take some shots deep quickly right at the first to just test the defense. And that is what I'm scared of at this game, is a fast start by Utah. Because I think this is a game where Utah wants to come out and make a statement that last year really was a fluke. If Utah State can weather that storm, create a lead for themselves, or even just play it even through the first half, I think they're in a great shape to win. But if Utah starts out fast, if they make big play and they jump on Utah State early and that crowd gets going, I call them the bloodsuckers, because that crowd can get loud and they can be a factor in this game, and you want to take Rice Eccles out of the picture completely. Switching it, though, because we are Utah State fans, we are optimistic. We're going to talk about what we're most excited about with this game. Matt?
Oh, geez.
Goes to you again.
Watching that USU defense play. They've shown highlight packages. I think KSL's done a handful of things of just how good and how fast that defense is, and I just love watching a good defense play. I would love nothing more than if we could get a couple big turnovers, maybe a big play there or two. But I just can't wait to see the defense. I just can't wait to see the defense play, especially under Todd Orlando. Excited to see what they do.
I was going to say the same thing, but I'll switch things over and say a throwback to the last time we played down in Rice Eccles, and I'm looking for a 90-yard plus touchdown run. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Thank heavens for YouTube.
I'd like to see Chucky Keaton prove himself against a big team. There's been a lot of talk from Utah fans when I'm listening to the radio that Chucky has great numbers against everybody, but when he played Wisconsin, when he plays BYU, when he plays Utah, the numbers haven't been there. Let's see where he is in his junior year, if he can step up with a whole group of new receivers and see what he can make happen.
I'm excited to actually see a contingent of Utah State fans that are loud and really trying to make somewhat of a difference in that stadium. Kraig, you kind of stole mine. Yeah, I know. So we just steal each other's, but
Lance and I are always on the same page. That's what
they are.
Always.
But I think you're totally right. There has been a lot of talk that Chucky performs so well against lesser competition. How does he perform on the big stage? I'll counter that by saying Auburn and Wisconsin, he put the team in position to win the game. It just didn't quite fall for him, but that is what I'm excited about, is for Chucky Keaton to come out and win the big game on the road.
Aggie fans, it's the time in the show where your questions get answered by us. This is the tweet sheet.
All right, starting off this week, there was a question that came in last week, which we forgot to get to because it came in just a titch late. And the question was, will Adam Kennedy get much playing time at Arkansas State? Glorious to report, he was named the starting quarterback like the day after that question. So
to the surprise of probably nobody that really watched him
play. Doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, I mean, you look, they went out and grabbed someone who has 1 year of eligibility left. You better hope he's going to go in there and be able to make a difference at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on to this week's questions. Kyle Goon tweets in from the Salt Lake Tribune, and he has an interesting question to pose to us. Who is the best-looking USU beat reporter?
Oof, that's a tough one. I mean, look, some things get better with age, and can we just throw out there Al Lewis?
Why not?
Ooh.
I will say this.
Surprise candidate.
Yeah,
It's
didn't
in.
see that coming, did ya?
Kyle has a hair that's a forest, but Matt Glade has been on TV. Kyle hasn't, so...
Yeah,
Face
I'm
for
sitting
radio.
here. I'm sitting here with a face for radio, so I'm not going to throw my name in the mix.
I nominate Trevor for our sound engineer as the best looking. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, he has neither the face for radio nor the voice for microphone.
But we love him.
It's our show. We get to determine the winner. So
Maybe we'll have a poll amongst women of the Front Row Network audience of
Why not?
who is the best looking. We'll get that out there.
it's our show.
Stay
so
tuned.
Stay
therefore, yeah. Sam Briner tweets in. He says, outside of Chucky, who will have to step up in order for the Aggies to win Thursday night?
I think a wide receiver or two. It's crucial that we're able to establish the passing game, because I think if we do that and Joe Hill and Joey DiMartino have a little bit more room to run, that opens up everything for the offense. That's kind of the biggest question, is the wide receiver position still. And if they're able to perform, especially in this opportunity against a weakened Utah secondary, I think that gives a lot of possibilities for what we can do offensively. We know the defense is going to make it tough for them to score. So if we're able to put up points and really put the pressure on them, I think that gives us a huge advantage throughout the game.
I was going to go the opposite side of the ball and go our defensive backfield to contain Kenneth Scott, Drez Anderson, Jake Murphy at the tight end position for Utah. You got to lock those guys down, because if they're not allowed to produce, Utah, like you said, is going to have an awfully tough time scoring points against our defense. And so it's imperative that our defensive backfield shut down their receiving threats.
And for me, I think what it comes down to between the two, because I think those would be the two options that I could choose from. Our defense has been proven enough that I can trust them. I think that our receiver core needs to stand up.
That's fair.
Because if it comes down to who is able to score and opening things up so that our running backs can take care of things, to open things up so Chucky can scramble and improvise the way we know he can, I think our receiver core needs to make it. I don't know which one of them it's going to be, but I got some good hopes.
Brett Brinkerhoff tweets in, and with this tweet, he becomes a friend of the show status. He's a regular now in the tweet seat. So
Very nice.
Yeah, Brett. He says, is Fackrell going to punish the Ute tight ends like Bojay did last year?
Ooh, I think he's going to more punish the Utes backfield, the offensive backfield. He's going to be pressuring the quarterback. He's going to be getting in Kelvin York's grill, especially when they try to run to the outside. I'm sure he'll do a decent amount of work on the tight ends, but I think a lot of that will fall on the middle linebackers with Dowdy and Vigil, as well as Brian Sweet. I think he's going to be very crucial in that role in this game. But, I mean, Fackrell's going to play his part for sure.
It's interesting to see how the game was schemed last year, because we had a lot of defensive sets that were really, really well built into exactly what we needed to do to stop them defensively. I really think that that's going to come down to Todd Orlando being able to call a really good game. I think Fackrell's probably going to have a blowout game, that's just based on who he is and what he's been able to produce. But I would look for our entire linebacker core to really be making some noise in this one.
Richie King with a question. What will be the biggest key to the Aggies winning on Thursday? A Utah weakness to exploit, maybe?
Like we mentioned earlier, their cornerbacks are struggling. I mean, they've had injuries. They've had guys not stepping up like they had hoped. And it's a definite point of concern for them. If our wide receivers are able to step up, that gives us the balance our offense needs, like we said before, and could be, what really makes the day for our offense.
And as has been discussed probably a couple times, I know by us, is there's not as many weaknesses on the Utah side of the ball as a lot of people may want to think, but the secondary is the one that if we were to exploit it, that's the most obvious thing we could do. Unfortunately, it goes up against our most unproven positions, so we'll see how that ends up playing out. But if we can go in and exploit both the cornerback and safety position, we're going to be in good shape.
I think the X factor for me in this game is special teams. Again, I mean, it came down to special teams last year's guys. That blocked punt and then the missed field goal. Don't forget, we had a missed extra point that almost cost us dearly. And so these are games where you get into situations where special teams make a big difference in the outcome of the game. Utah State, to me, has to win the special teams battle if they're going to win this game. Don tweets in, this is a lofty question. He says, assuming USU wins every game, at what point do you think they'll enter the top 25/top 10?
Ooh, I think top 25 given that we're already receiving a lot of votes, I think a road win over a Pac-12 team will go a long way. And, if you win on the road against Air Force, people take notice of that. I honestly think that after just 2-0 that we could crack the top 25. As far as top 10, that gets a little bit more difficult because a lot more has to play out with the teams in front of you. The pollsters are a lot more reluctant to drop, maybe those big name BCS schools that they had highly rated early on, even if they're struggling. I mean, look at USC coming off the season they had, and they're still in the top 25, despite the losses they had too. So it's tough to say how soon we could enter the top 10, but if I were getting bold, I would say that if we are still undefeated through the game against BYU, that we could legitimately, after that, possibly crack the top 10. But let's take it one game at a time.
Well, I'm pretty much in concurrence. I honestly see us jumping. We're sitting about 38th in one of the polls, 35th. I could see us jumping about 5 spots per victory for the first 2. I would honestly feel a little more comfortable probably saying it's after the Weber State game, just because you need enough people in front of you to get mixed up in order to actually move into the top 25. And then I really don't see us cracking top 10 unless we are undefeated after the BYU game, because that's 7-0 against probably one of the tougher schedules that we've ever seen at Utah State. If we can make it that far, that's when I see us making it through. But I would see us top 25, maybe the Air Force game, but my gut would be at 3-0 after Weber, which would be great because I don't see SC losing their first games at all.
No.
So having a top 25 matchup in the Coliseum, I think would be a blast.
Well, I disagree just a titch bit. I think for Utah State to crack the top 10, I think the voters will want to see them beat Boise State. I think that's a game that voters and those in the media are watching, and they're looking to see how Utah State adjusts to the Mountain West. And there's no bigger game than that Utah State-Boise State matchup here in Logan. And I think voters will want to see Utah State come through that undefeated. And if they do, I think top 10 is very likely. But like we said,
one game at a time.
Yeah, we're sounding
Utah this week.
Yeah.
We had a couple questions about tailgating and watch parties for those who are either going down to Salt Lake City or those who are not able to attend the game at Rice Eccles. So Dallin Laird at the Herd got in touch with us, and he had some information that he wanted us to throw out to Aggie Nation and for everyone that's attending the game or is looking for a place to watch it. He says, for those going down to Salt Lake for the game, there will be a caravan meeting up in the parking lot west of the stadium towards the north end at 2 p.m. This is for everyone who's going down, students, alum, anyone from Aggie Nation. So show up there. They will have window paint there to deck out your car and Aggie logos, different sayings, hashtag arms around. We need to have that.
There you go.
Throw it on.
That needs to be on at least a couple cars. They're going to follow the Spirit bus leaving the parking lot at around 2:15. They're going to arrive in Salt Lake. They're hoping around 4 o'clock they're going to start the students' alumni tailgate. That's going to be located on the grass east of the Eccles Tennis Center, located at about 580 South and 1580 East. There will be free pizza until it's gone. If you need directions, if you head east of 500 South, it's your first right at the light after passing Rice Eccles Stadium. For those not going to the game, if you need a place to watch it, the TSC Ballroom will be open. There will be free pizza, wings, prize giveaways, and so that will be a place. If you need a place in the Valley to go watch the game, that's a good place. I've also heard Buffalo Wild Wings will probably have the game on as well.
Not just probably. It's going to be
not,
all over.
They will be fired from being a restaurant.
I have watched Fox Sports 1 several times in the past about week and a half there during my nightly visits.
Excellent.
So, yeah, they will have
count on it. It should
limited
be,
seating there, though, so you're going to have to figure something out if you're not going to be able to show up at game time and expect to grab a seat to it.
But there are options available for people who want to watch the game.
Just another quick note, too. I don't know if many other Aggie fans have traveled down to games at Utah before, and it's been a few years since we've been there. Certainly, we haven't been there since we've done things like beat Utah, so I don't know if it'll be a different atmosphere. But in the past, a couple friends and I would walk through the Ute tailgate lot, and Ute fans would be stopping us, saying, "Hey, Aggie fans, come hang out with us." They were offering us food, drinks, being just absolutely awesome to us. So, they call it the Battle of the Brothers, and that's kind of the impression that I've taken from it. They've been cool to us. I know last year Ute fans came up and tailgated with us up in Logan a lot. So enjoy each other, be friendly, walk through, mingle, meet people, and have a good time.
As always, Tweet Sheeters, thank you for sending those questions in. You can send them in any time of the week at USU Front Row on Twitter. Make sure to use the hashtag TweetSheet. We always enjoy answering your questions and imparting our limited knowledge onto you.
All right, Aggie Nation, we've got a new small segment we're going to do this week, and hopefully something that will come up in future casts as well. Last week, we introduced the idea of arms around and the hashtag that we're putting out for Aggie fans to use. We're going to do, from now on, an arms around moment of the week. We're going to have you guys, if you want, submit something you've done to support the sports team, one of your friends may, perhaps that's done something, or something that you've seen go on campus that is an example of Aggie Nation putting their arms around our team. This week, actually, our example is going to be a little bit different in that our arms around moment's going to go to Coach Wells. This week, I know Coach Wells actually went out and spent some time with the marching band, which I think is an awesome gesture. I know that there's been a lot of complaints in the past about what's gone on with the marching band and how disconnected they are from our actual athletic, that the goals have been different, that they haven't been honed in on things. And I think this is just a brilliant move by Coach Wells. It really shows to me that we're trying to make this a campus-wide atmosphere, that it's not just about sports, it's not just about what's going on the field, but this is really something we're trying to make into something that every single member of our school can be proud of. I know a lot of the marching band kids were really, really grateful for him going out and spending time with them. It's been a huge push lately, as someone who is part of the Kane College of the Arts, to watch what's been going on to try to really bring the Kane College and the things that we're doing in and making it part of the university as a whole. And this is just another example of the football program putting their arms around the rest of the university, and something that the university is now going to be able to do back. Just a huge shout out to them and a shout out to the marching band. We're looking forward to some good times with you guys this year. And to be honest, I realize that there's not a lot that people have in common backwards and forwards between the football program and the marching band, but music brings them together, because there is nothing that gets my blood boiling and ready to go than hearing the Scotsman. And I know that works the same for the football team, the basketball team, and I'm hoping that it means something to the marching band to inspire that kind of emotion in people. So my shout out to Coach Wells and the marching band. That's our arms around moment of the week.
The first ever.
Yeah.
So heck yeah, Coach Wells.
Well done. Now's the time in the program where we turn the microphone over to one of our own, and they get to rant on some of their thoughts on the week. And so we turn the mic to Matt Sonnenberg and let him go at it. It's the rant.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Ladies and gentlemen of Aggie Nation, a new football season is upon us, and it's not like it used to be. Now we know that we can go out and win 10 games and be the favorites to win a bowl game. The rebuilding is complete, and now Utah State football truly is a power. When was the last time you could say that we went into a season with top 25 votes, in a position to possibly crack the top 25 within a week or two into the year? But that's where we are, and could not possibly be more excited. But there's things we got to remember, is that it is a new season, and some things are going to play out differently. We might not win the huge game at La Tech like we did last year to put ourselves in position for a conference championship. But then again, we might go to USC and finally pull off that big upset that we've come so close to doing so many times now. Things will play out differently, for better or for worse. What really makes it interesting is the excitement along the way and seeing how it's all going to happen, because that's truly what we get out of sports. If we knew how it was all going to happen, what would the excitement be? But on top of that, enjoy this season for the camaraderie, for being with good people, good friends, hanging out and watching the team that you love. In my book, there's nothing better you could possibly be doing on a Saturday afternoon than out with your friends, tailgating all day, and going crazy for your team out on the field. And now we have the luxury that team on the field is a whole lot of fun to watch, and they're going to win a lot of football games. Another thing to do this season is to be smart. Be rational, and just be awesome to pretty much everyone you meet, whether it's your fellow Aggie fans or fans of opposing schools. Keep in mind that everything you do representing Utah State will develop opinions for other people around you, whether it's from fellow Aggies or for people from other schools. And those opinions can be, developed on good and bad experiences, but also possibly influence things down the road. You never know if one person might have ties to a recruit that Utah State could be chasing down the road. You never know if what you say online could be read by a recruit and be something that turns them off. But at the same time, if you act and compose yourself with high character and with intellect, it's infectious. It will rub off, and people will see that, and they will want to be a part of what we do. But most of all, above all else, with this new football season upon us, stick with this team no matter what. Like I said, things will play out differently for better or worse. We might not win 11 games again this year. We might go undefeated. But if we have a couple tough losses, don't let that deter you from coming out the next Saturday to Romney Stadium and yelling your lungs out all over again. We're in the Mountain West now, and we're going to have some really tough games. But that means we're also going to have some really exciting games and a lot more close games than we might have had in the last couple of years in the WAC. But regardless, we're going to have a lot of exciting and memorable moments to bring us together and bring us a whole lot of joy from watching this team that we love. And that's what it's all about. So cherish all these memories. Be the most outstanding Aggie fan you can be. Be smart. Be awesome. Be loud. Go Aggies. Let's do this in 2013.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well done.
Well said. Well said. I think it's important that Aggie Nation remembers just how far we've come and to enjoy every single moment. So, well said, Matt. Needed
Just
to be
remember
said.
how far we've come and to never be like some people we hate.
Well, it's been another great episode of the Front Row Show. It's been a great game preview. So excited for the game. It's we've been talking all summer, and it's finally here. Kraig, thanks for joining us today on the Front Row
Thanks for
Show.
having me. Let's do it again.
I totally agree. Anytime you want. If people want to get in contact with you, where's the best way to do that?
You can follow me on Twitter at DesNewsCraig, DesNewsKraig. I spell it with a K.
Will you
I'm
engage
sorry.
with fans?
I do. I try to tweet
excellent.
back to everybody. You can also follow me at Kraig W if you want to learn about my trips to the DMV and stupid stuff like that.
Excellent. Everyone go give Kraig a follow. And for the Front Row Show, I'm Jeff Browning.
I'm Kraig Williams.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
Go Aggies!
Recording? All right. This is a cheesy intro, but whatever. Jeff. I'm kidding.
And now I am my Easter egg.
See, I'm looking out.
Didn't take long.
All right. Hey, Aggie fans. Thanks again for listening to this episode of The Front Row Show. Be sure to download all our archived episodes on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at USU Front Row. Like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/USU Front Row. And subscribe to us on our new YouTube channel at youtube.com/USU Front Row.